Welcome back, glad to stay with us. This is your world, and we're glad that you are still with us. Now, when you're trying to determine the components of a successful leader, it is very easy to actually fall back on certain terms that we commonly associate with leadership. You know, words like assertive, inspirational, confident, right? But then again, what about being authentic? That is the question that we're asking you today, because I'm sure you've had this famous quote by Oscar Wilde, who says, "Be yourself, because the rest is taken." But does this apply in leadership, and especially among women leaders? And what difference does it make? Well, Gwen Kinusu, Chief Executive Officer from Prudential, unpacks it all for us. And it's so good to see you this morning. Karibu sana, Gwen. How are you feeling this morning?
I'm very well, thank
Looking very lovely as well.
Thank you.
All
So
right.
are you.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's just start with first things first. When it comes to leadership, right? And especially when it comes to being an authentic leader. Right? So what would you say, or how would you describe it, and especially in this day and age?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I think an authentic leader is someone who is real, someone who is genuine, someone who has not only gone through the process of self-awareness, but they've also gone through the process of self-acceptance.
All right.
And that's what they bring to their leadership story. That's what they bring to the people they lead and the people they interact with.
All right, awareness and acceptance. I love these two words, because now more than ever we hear a lot of, you know, you need to be more self-aware. You need to also accept yourself as you are. And I think it's very, very important, and especially amongst the women and women leaders, where of course we see a lot of challenges, and especially when it comes to leadership, right? Why would you say these two are very, very important in terms of leadership?
I think when you lead from a place where you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses are, you know who you're leading, then you're able to operate from your area of strength. Now, I think part of being an authentic leader is just the acknowledgement that you can only use the levers that best work. And you can't do that when you're constrained by trying to be like other people, or trying to mimic behaviors that are not coherent with who you are. Yeah.
Okay. Isn't this something that you see on a day-to-day basis, as far as leaders trying to mimic other leaders? And of course, before you answer that, remember the question that we're asking you today, and that is, what exactly makes a great leader? That is the question that we want to hear your feedback on, and that is, what makes a great leader? This is according to you. What, again, makes a great leader? Feel free to interact with us at NTV Kenya at Lubembe_Winnie. We just want to understand what you think makes a great leader, and of course we'll be sampling your feedback before we end the show. But for now, Gwen, as far as then mimicking other people, trying to put up a picture or an image that is not really you, but simply because you are a leader and most of the time you're perceived to be a certain way, don't you think sometimes we have that a lot, and especially in this modern society?
I think it's a mixture of both, and I'll go back to what I said earlier about self-acceptance and self-awareness. I think you've got leaders who, especially for us female leaders, you've got those of us who, when you're beginning your leadership journey, you're typically very aware that the construct of leadership is sort of premised on male leadership behaviors. So things like assertiveness, self-promotion, those are traits that in the corporate workplace, for example, are associated with strong leadership. But then as a female leader, the natural inclination for most of us, not all of us, is to be nurturing, is to be soft-spoken, is to be caring, etc. So I think it's that balance of determining, who am I first? Who am I as a person? And then who am I as a leader? And I think also when you determine what your value system is, then it's very possible to be attracted to leaders and to therefore try to mimic behaviors of those you admire. I think it's normal and it's not foreign. But I think the principal thing is, who are you? What is your value system? Why are you here? Are you in tune with your purpose? Are you in tune with your assignment and what you're supposed to do? And then your leadership stems out of all of that. But I'll just always go back to, if you know who you are, if you accept who you are, if you accept your strengths and weaknesses, then you're able to be more authentic in the way you lead. Yeah.
Okay. And especially, like you said, for women, which again was going to be my next question in terms of, do you think then authentic leadership has, you know, like some bit of gender construct towards the same, right?
Yeah. You'll find that today it's not too foreign, right? It's not too foreign to find women in leadership the way it used to be.
If anything, we've grown, which is a good thing.
We have. I think there's a lot of strides that have been made. And when you look at, like I said earlier, when you look at the behaviors of leadership, they are typically constructed from male leadership traits. So like I said, assertiveness, super confidence, self-promotion, etc. So do I think that there's a male construct to it? I do think there is. And I think about it in two ways. One is that leadership in and of itself, I think, was created for and by men, right?
True.
And so when I was laughing yesterday because I was trying to hang my jacket in the office. And you know the thing that you hang your jacket on, that wooden thing, it's too wide for my jacket. So my jacket couldn't fit. Right?
Yes.
Who made it?
I see it. I see it. Yes.
When you think about just the construct in the workplace and in leadership, it's really about walking into a place. If you're walking into a boardroom and there's a lot of testosterone in the room, that's what it is, right? That's what it is. Then when you look at even organizations themselves, I think the norms, the practices, the structure is really centered around male experiences. I think we've made some strides because today you've got things that make sense for us as women. So you've got mother rooms where if you have a child, you can bring your child in and breastfeed, or you can express, which is great. But I think there's a lot more to be done, not just by all of us communally coming together and figuring out what those strides would look like and what the system structures and norms need to be so that there are more opportunities for women to not only rise to the top but to stay there. But also from a personal perspective, I think we've got to take personal responsibility for the things we as women must do to be able to get there.
I like that. I want to make it a little bit personal, right? And just get to understand your bit of your story and your experience as, again, a female leader, right? And carrying that very big title, a CEO, right? Has it always been easy for you? Have you always been authentic, or you had to somewhat learn to get back to who you truly are and lead from that point, and not just trying to mimic other people because you want people to somewhat respect you or, you know, perceive you in a certain way?
Okay, so I think I'll demystify and say I've not always been a CEO. And for me, I think when I describe myself, I think the most apt description I would give of myself is I'm a student of life. I'm an observer of life, I'm a student of life. And so every experience I've had, every interaction I've had at work has allowed me to learn something from somebody. And when I think about work and life, I was discussing this with someone the other day, not too long ago. And we were discussing work-life balance. And for me, and I think for most women, that doesn't exist.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Not because it's not attainable, but because I think the construct is it should be work harmony. Because the fact of the matter is I'm at work for possibly more than 8 hours a day. And I'm in my bed for maybe, hopefully, an equivalent period of time. But then the rest of the time is family time and time with friends and time for other things. So the way I look at it is I always walk into every room asking myself, what assignment am I on? Or what role am I playing? So if that room is my home, then I have to leave my job at the door. And I've got to walk into my home very clear that I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, or whatever. Because my kids don't need a boss.
They need their mother.
My kids need their mother.
Absolutely.
When it comes time to discipline them, I need to have the presence of mind to be able to do it in a way that will count. So that 10 years from now, I've not damaged my kids because I carried my anger from the office or my pressure and whatever. Yeah. So I think the key thing for me is how do I make sure, with some relative success, that most of the time, because it's not possible to show up well 100% of the time. It's just not possible to do that. Yeah. But for most of the time, that for every assignment I'm on, I do the best that I can, and with the levers that I can. And to remember that positions come and go, and they should not define who we are, that the definition of who we are goes beyond an assignment and goes behind the roles and titles we carry.
Okay. And do you think sometimes this affects how women lead? Because like you said, work-life balance, doesn't really exist for a woman. Yeah.
To be honest, I think being a mom has probably made me a better leader.
Oh, really?
Being a wife has probably made me a better negotiator.
Good, okay.
Because I'm always negotiating.
But, can we?
But I think the way we lead as women is perhaps, I look at it from different spectrums. On the one spectrum, you've got the woman who's starting out, and she's starting out and not fully aware of herself, not fully aware of the expectations or the demands that have been placed on her as a leader. So the most natural thing for her is perhaps to spend a lot of time, and this is not foreign, a lot of time trying to figure out what is the image of leadership that I must mold into. You've got another leader who is probably pretty preoccupied with how do I show up as a leader. You've got another one who's perhaps mimicking male leadership behaviors because that's perhaps the only reference she has growing up, because there's few women at the top to model authenticity, because not because there are few women who are authentic, but maybe they're not enough. And I say that because coming up and growing into my career, there were very few women. I had very few women bosses
to look up to.
Or even bosses, because I've learned more from those daily interactions than I have from far off, right? But then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got women who found their space.
They're doing it very well.
And they're doing it very well, and they're winning, and they've created great strides for us to follow. And they're leading from their place of authenticity. So I think the thing for all of us is just to spend that much more time figuring out what is important to you, what's your value system, how do you frame that, and how do you lead from your authentic place.
Okay, so then what do you think should be done in terms of molding and allowing women that space to lead as themselves, right? And not trying to mimic someone else.
So I'm not sure I have the answer for that. But I'll say that my learnings coming from where I have are that, number one, we must create the right environment where our people feel that they can bring their best selves. And it's not just about women, it's about the fact that we've got a different workforce. Our parents worked 1 or 2 jobs their whole lives, their whole work lives, and this was mainly for sustenance. We're dealing with kids who are multi-talented, who have a day job, but then who also have other gigs. So they are more creative, they are different, they are not linear thinkers, etc. So how do you allow them to show up in the best way that they can? Is to first address the fact that allow them to bring their best selves to work. And then we need to spend more time figuring out how to influence, motivate, and empower them. And that diversity is included. We need to have inclusive conversations. We have, in Prudential, we are very intentional about being a values-driven organization. So we've got different values. We encourage our staff to be courageous, to be ambitious, to be nimble, to be curious, etc., etc. So we've got, I remember now, we've got a member of staff that we brought on board. And when she was joining my team at the time, and when she was joining us, I was very clear that we were getting her because she's got a very creative eye. She's very creative eye, designer, etc. But she dresses very differently. Okay, so she's very self-expressive in the way she dresses, in the way she thinks. But in my mind, those two are not mutually exclusive. So I remember one time she came to the office and my boss called me and he's like, Gwen, your girl is wearing fancy sports shoes to the office. And at the time I didn't know this, but then later on when we were laughing about it, I was like, what were those sports shoes? And she's like, they're Balenciaga. And I didn't know what that was, and now I do. And for me, it's about allowing that person to be different, but to be okay. That it's okay, and she should still belong. We have been able to get a lot of that creativity out for the benefit of the organization because we let her be. And that's one story. When I think about Prudential, for example, I know that in 1871, we were the first financial services organization to hire women. Today in Prudential, Kenya, we were having a conversation with my colleagues earlier where we were saying, should we actually admit what our gender split is at senior leadership? Because we've got 67% representation at senior leadership.
That's amazing.
And we thought if we say that, people will be like, that organization is being run by women.
Yes, or it's like a women-centered type of organization.
But then what's wrong with it? Because guess what? Every woman on that table deserves to be there. And I love that that didn't come from me. It came from a member of my team. Because nobody there was put in because of D&I. They belong to be there. So I think when we talk about gender constructs, that's what it is. That it should be okay for us to say we have talented women at the top. Because if we said that an organization is led by 67% men, it would be okay. It would sound fine.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It would be like this one. It's very stable.
Right.
Yeah.
Ours is very stable too.
Right. And that is a myth that we are actually demystifying today. Right? Okay. And then as far as then, and like the fact that you're saying, you know what, at the end of the day, let the women lead from a point of who they are. And not only women, even the men. Everyone just to lead from a point of who they are and being their authentic selves, right? But then again, when it comes to women in leadership, and yes, and we see this as well amongst women political leaders, right? Where there's some who are very straight cut, right? It's like, this is what needs to be done and this is how we need to go. But you'd find that there's so many labels that are attached to that kind of woman or leadership style. Oh, she's too bossy, or she's too arrogant, or she's too this. But she's just being herself. Let's get, you know, the work done and all those things. So then when it comes to the stigma and the pressure associated with being your authentic self and being labeled and the certain not accepting this, right? What would you say needs to be changed?
I want to quote Maslow, and I read something that says that he discusses the authentic self, that the true self is not developed through conforming to social norms or pressures. And I found that very impactful. I thought it was very punchy, actually. That at the end of the day, I look forward to a future where my daughter never has to try to be somebody she's not. She's bossy, but why should that be not okay?
A problem.
But I think even when we say bossy, there's almost like a negative connotation
towards it. Absolutely.
I think if she was a boy, we would be saying she's very confident. And so to all the women out there who dare to be themselves, I say go for it. I think we need to create spaces where women can be themselves. We need to create spaces where men can be themselves, where we can all show up just the way we are, and it's okay. And to be fair and to be honest, it's not every place that allows that to happen. I remember not too long ago, one of my mentors said to me that when you are welcomed into, he asked me, the rooms that I am welcomed into, who welcomes me into those rooms? And when I thought about it, it's been mostly men who have welcomed me into those rooms. So I think even as we come up with these constructs, we've got to be careful that it must be inclusive. These conversations need to happen both with men and with women. Because it's not just about women being asked to be stronger than men, because we know in Kenya, for example, we've got an issue around perhaps women seeming to be too empowered than men. But and that's why I'm saying it's not just about that. It's about bringing up a generation of leaders who dare to be themselves and who are not encumbered by how they will be titled or labeled based on how they behave or show up.
Okay, so then what needs to be how then do you form these habits and these traits so that help you to actually become an authentic leader? Yeah.
So I think first it's to lead from the front, is to be myself.
Okay.
I remember one time I had gone for a seminar with my team, and one of my team members introduced me to someone, and this person was shocked.
Yeah.
And I asked my colleague,
why?
What was that about?
Yeah.
And he said, you're wearing a hoodie and jeans.
Oh.
And I said, is that good or bad? And he said, no, because you can show up in a hoodie and jeans, perhaps I am more comfortable to do the same.
All right.
Right? So I'm not saying that everyone should put on a hoodie
and jeans and show up in places. Yeah. Okay.
But I think when we are ourselves, we give other people permission to be themselves. I think the other thing is to be aware of the biases we ourselves hold, and to be open to ask the right questions, to have inclusive dialogue, and to support others through their own process. It is difficult to create an environment where everybody feels seen and everybody feels empowered. But I think that's a work that needs to be done. I've worked in organizations where I have felt that it's just not the place for me to show up as Gwen. Yeah?
Okay.
And that has held me back, because then I'm not bringing my best self to work. Yeah? And so one of my biggest assignments today is to say, how do I allow everyone to bring their best selves? So I think it is really about being intentional, about letting people express themselves, creating opportunities for innovation where it's unhindered, right? If I was to draw back to the example of the Balenciaga shoes, it's really about saying, you know what, it doesn't matter how you show up. What we care about is what you bring.
Okay.
Yeah? But we can't do that if we only see other people the way we see ourselves, because that's then a personal bias.
Okay.
So I should be comfortable enough to say, if you show up like that and that's truly you, I should be comfortable to accommodate you. And perhaps I can learn something along the way as well.
All right. But then again, how then do you strike a balance in terms of, yes, allowing people to be who they are, you know, authentic selves, but also respect, you know, the fact that, for example, you are in a workplace and you need to maybe behave in a certain way or dress in a certain way. So then where is that balance comes in, you know, coming in terms of, yes, be yourself, absolutely. But again, it's a bit of professionalism.
Okay. I can't claim to fully have the answer to that, but I'll tell you what we do at Prudential.
All right.
Number one, we try to create the guardrails around who we want to be as an organization.
Okay.
So number one, we're a values-driven organization. So those values cover what we ourselves chose as the values we want to live by. And even when I think about it as an individual, forget about the fact that I'm an employee, it's things that I relate to. Empathetic, curious, courageous, ambitious, nimble. Those are things that I would aspire for, whether or not I worked in Prudential.
Okay.
So then, how then do you behave is addressed through those values. But then I think the thing is, like, with children, is not to make assumptions, and perhaps maybe not with children, but with everybody. We didn't grow up knowing exactly what we needed to do. Somebody taught us. And so I think the work of leadership is to be able to train and train and train and have those candid conversations around what needs to work and what doesn't need to work. The thing we try to do very well is to be very clear about business outcomes. Okay. So we say these are our business outcomes and these are the initiatives to support those outcomes. But how you do it is up to you.
Totally up to you.
It's totally up to you. So if the team decides, for example, to drive a certain initiative, the best way to get internal staff engagement is to make sure that, I'll give you an example. We figured out that during COVID, everybody worked in their pajamas. So when we were having the conversations about a blended approach where people would come in using a hybrid system, so you come in some weeks and you stay home some weeks, we said, if you've been working in your pajamas, then just come to work in casual clothes.
Okay.
Why do you have to suit up? You've been productive in your PJs, right?
Yes.
Right? So it's just building upon the experience and having those open dialogues and saying, what will work is not whether you come to work in jeans or not. It's the outcome
of the same.
And it is us being values driven, so that in the end, whether we are, our strategy is to be customer obsessed. And we think that that's the only way we'll be able to differentiate, because today we're a small player in this market, but our aspiration is not to be that for too long. And the only way we can do that is to ensure that we've got the right people with us, and that those people are productive, and we become very good at making people, attracting talent, retaining talent, but making sure that that talent is productive. And we do that by making sure that this is a place you want to come to. This is a place where you can be creative. This is a place where your work is acknowledged and recognized, etc. So there is that conflict. It's the truth. There is that conflict. And it's not always going to be perfect, but we are making strides to just get better and better and learn from others.
And also when it comes to what you mentioned earlier on about being in a space where you don't feel your authentic self, right? And you don't feel that that will be accepted. And I'm pretty sure this is where so many people are stuck. Because you're like, yes, I'm not allowed to be my authentic self, but again, I need the money at the end of the day, because again, there are bills to pay and, you know, there's life to live. So then what do you do in such a space to make sure that then, much as you're not accepted, you know, so then what do you do but still be productive at the end of the day?
I think at the end of the day is to remember that you own your personal growth and development, and you must do what it takes to be able to grow yourself, to grow your leadership, to grow your talent, to grow your skill set, etc. And I think there's places for people like that to thrive.
There really is. There is.
And I just want to tell that person that it might not be where you are today, but you'll find that place. And I think the future, one of the future wars is on talent. Right? And the organizations that spend the most time figuring out how to attract and retain that talent, whether it's in the shape and form that's traditional, whether it's in the artist who wants to rock up with green hair, but still gives you perhaps the best social media impact that your business needs, or whether it's somebody who is an introvert and then who doesn't do the traditional things that are required to be able to perhaps be in a role that would be previously occupied by extroverts. I think the work to be done is to say, how do we create a place for those people to thrive, to succeed? But if you're that person in waiting, then the thing I'd tell you is just be yourself.
And I liked what you said earlier on in terms of, you know what, once you are yourself, it's very easy for people to also be themselves around you and also accept you for who you truly are. I like that. All right, how about we take a look at what you have to say as far as the question that we asked you, and that is, what exactly makes a great leader? Once again, what exactly makes a great leader? Keep interacting with us on our socials, but at God of Sam says the passion and actions to make his or her country better in every sphere of life. I like that. And then someone else says, this is Mike, says a great leader is one who leads with wisdom. Okay, very important. And then someone else says, this is Katel says, a great leader thinks about his or her people when given a chance to lead. All right, I like that. Keep interacting with us on at EdTV Kenya, at Lubembe_Winnie. If you want to call in, maybe you have a question for Gwen, or you want to chime into the conversation of the day, again, feel free to do so. The numbers are down on your screen, so that at the end of the day, we have a better understanding as far as leadership is concerned, but not just leadership, okay? What makes a great leader as far as authenticity in leadership is concerned. So Gwen, again, when coming back to women, and I'm pretty sure you've had this a lot, where people say, oh, give a woman a little bit of power and then wanakanya kila mtu, right? Or women cannot make great leaders because they're too emotional. All right, or women cannot make, you know, great leaders because they're this, because they're that. They're not able to leave their emotions, let's say, at home, or balance, you know, the work-life balance, right? Like when you hear such conversations, and especially you being a leader where you are today, do you think this is more of a perception, or there's some little tiny, teeny bit of truth towards it?
That's interesting. I think biases are a part of of human life. And those are biases that we hold. And it's not just about women. We've got biases about a lot of other stuff. But I think when it comes to emotions, whether it's men or women who have emotions, we bring them to the workplace. Yeah? And we bring them to our leadership. And I think for me, the thing is, when we have people in our teams who we've identified as great talent, part of equipping them and empowering them is providing them with coaching and providing them with the tools for them to be able to manage themselves and to manage their emotions in a way that serves them. Yeah. I think if we said that we can live in a world where emotions don't show up, it's a lie.
It's a lie.
And what we then must do is the work around how do we help you to manage your emotions and channel them positively so that you show up better as a leader and so that it serves you and it serves the objective you're trying to meet.
All right. So when it comes to then, aspects of any organization, of course, there's that acknowledgement that there's some level of cohesion, performance, as well as compliance. And this is by an individual, which is very, very necessary, right? So then how do you balance the dynamics of organization culture, and especially when it comes to expectations, as well as individuals' identity?
And I like that question because if there's one thing I'm learning to do now, it's that thing called balance. Where you've got so many constituencies that need to be balanced out. So from where we sit at Prudential, the approach we take is to create guardrails. Okay, so if this is a page, you can paint within these 4 lines, but you can't paint outside. Okay, and so what those 4 lines represent is what our business objectives are, what our business outcomes are, who we are as a brand, what we stand for, and what's at the core of our purpose. And so the question for us is always, so if we allow yourself to have authentic expression, is it going to affect any of those guardrails? And if it doesn't, then please
go ahead,
be a star, and shine bright. But on the other end of the scale, it's to say, are there some things that can be destructive? And if there are, how then do we best deal with those? I think one of the things about leadership maturity is being able to perhaps look back with hindsight and learn from experience and say, you've got incredible people, and the work that must be done together with those people is to help them see how they can build themselves. I've heard people say that the best competition is the one that you have with yourself. That you want to be better than you were yesterday. I don't necessarily look at it as competition because as I get older, I think I just want to be gentler with myself. So the way I look at it is to say that whatever I learned yesterday, if this behavior or if this thing wasn't serving me yesterday and I've learned from it, then I want to keep building that extra block. I just keep adding another building block to this framework of leadership that I'm creating for myself and for the team that I work with. And that every individual needs to feel like there's a place for them. One of the things that gives me a lot of joy and pride is when I sit with my team and we are all very different and very diverse. And I'm always taken aback when you just listen to what the input is from everyone. It's so different. You could never do that by yourself. And so for me, it's always to ask myself, how do I get more of that juice? How do I allow them to know that whatever you said is so important and they need to then take the elevator back down so that they are doing that for their teams, etc. Because it's an assignment.
It really
and
is.
We've got to give it our best shot.
All right. And then we have a caller on the line, Francis from Embakasi. Good morning. Francis, are you there?
Yes.
All right. Good morning.
Morning to you.
Thank you very much for calling us. Do you have a question or do you want to chime into the conversation?
I wanted you to first say, I'm happy the way you are discussing. I love ladies leadership.
Okay.
Ladies are good in leadership. Without ladies, men cannot do. So as we are heading to our political arena, leadership is something which needs to be well looked at. In Kenya, I believe that most of the leaders are not leaders because of calling, because leadership is a talent just like any other talent. Leaders here is influenced by money. Money. Our leadership is about money. But if we can have a government which can control this, and I can give you some of the need to control, some of the qualities. If we can start with parliament. Parliament had been the problem of this country, whereby those parliamentarians who are there, they had been going there because they have money.
Okay.
But if we can go to, we have a bill which can control the quality or the money which these people are paid when they enter into politics. Let's say MP can be paid just like a fee for some fund, where an MP can get even at allowed 200,000 shillings, because in the politics, we have people who are paid without education, and our politics have reduced our country, have reduced our education to have no value. Because you find a professor, a doctor, those people who are well learned, they are never paid. In fact, in the future, their responsibility will have generations which will never have interest with education. Because if you enter into politics, you are well paid. Doesn't mean even if you don't have education.
Okay.
But if we can have a value whereby whoever has profession, like professor, doctor, people who are well learned, paid than a politician. You see?
Okay.
In fact, we can retain back the taste of our country. You get me, ladies? That is where we are looking at, because like now we can see even doctors are resigning now, going to parliament. Professors resigning, going to parliament. Because why? Now professor has no value in our country. Doctor has no value.
Okay.
That's the point I would like to at least we put in motion, and also the integrity of our leadership.
Integrity. Okay.
Like now our country, I won't say anybody's name, but I know our country now is in the danger of electing leaders with no integrity. Because money has become our lord.
Okay.
As far as you have money,
you can get this
doesn't mean
position.
you killed anybody. You are in scandal. You are in where, as far as you have money, and you are adding somewhere with a chopper, very handsome looking guy with the suit, you are a leader.
Okay, I hear you, Francis. I hear you. All right. Thank you very much for your contribution this morning, Francis. And he brings up very, very valid points, right? As far as then cases of integrity in the country. And again, it's clear we see this on a day-to-day basis. And I'll just throw this to you, Gwen, in terms of then nurturing these leaders who, you know, integrity is actually of topmost. But then again, there's also this discussion about leaders are born, others say leaders are made. So, you know, where do you come in as far as that is concerned? But then again, that aspect of then integrity and still being authentic to yourself without necessarily trying to mimic others so that people love you. Like what he says, if you have money, then some people will actually love you.
Yeah. Thank you, Francis. Those were very, very good insights. I like his call to professionals to do more and to lead from the front and perhaps to consider political seats. And he's right when he says we are setting up behaviors that then make our young people think that if I don't need to go to school.
Yeah.
And I don't need to work so hard. All I need to do is to be popular, and I'll get voted in and I'll make money. But I also are hopeful that there are those behind us who have placed a higher value on what matters. Yeah. So that they say that we deserve the leaders we have. Yeah, that if we demand more from our leaders, perhaps we will get more.
Absolutely.
So my hope for the future of this country is that we would have higher standards. We would have higher expectations of our leaders. And that can only happen if we do that for ourselves.
True.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
That we put in the work to, to just get there, and then perhaps have the profile of leaders changing progressively over time. But even as I say that, I think we've got a great country.
We really
think
have. Yes.
We are probably one of the only countries in the world or in Africa where we can speak out about our president and we can still walk in the street and nothing happens.
Yes.
So the fact that we have freedom of speech, the fact that there is so much development in our country, there's still a lot of
that
good.
Needs to be
Even
done,
when he was talking about politicians, I kept thinking, perhaps for those of us who grew up seeing Charity Ngilu, Wangari Maathai in leadership, it perhaps made us think, if they can do it, so can we. So they opened up opportunities for those little girls who are watching them to say, I also want to be a leader.
Yes.
So I'd like to say that it's not all lost. We're coming from a good base, and a lot more needs to be done, and hopefully we will get there, and we will get there by placing a higher demand on our leaders.
I love that, yeah.
When it comes to integrity, I think the key thing for me about authenticity is saying, be yourself. Yeah. And being yourself is saying, I want to do the right thing by me. And I hope that that right thing then is the right thing universally.
Oh yes, it's
right?
Not only for you.
It's not only for you.
For you, okay.
So when you ask me about how do we nurture integrity, I think it's first from the selection process.
Yes.
That the people you select, the talent you select, have high standards of integrity. Because it is not lost on us that they will be compromised at some point or other.
Absolutely.
But you want that when that compromise comes, that they would choose the right road. I don't call it the high road, but the right road.
Okay.
And so I think institutionally is to put in place systems and structures that ensure that you promote high integrity and that you weed out poor integrity. Yeah.
I like that. And then again, just recently we celebrated again International Women's Day, and of course the theme was break the bias. And now, not even now, like in the society that we're living in, of course there's a lot of biasness, and especially when it comes to leadership and women and getting those opportunities to just go out, thrive, lead, and just make sure that again, that the entire society then thrives based on the kind of leadership that you provide. So then how do we break this bias?
Yeah. I think the first thing is being aware that it exists.
Oh yes, acknowledging that it exists. Okay, all right.
And then it's also being aware of your own biases, right?
Because we do have that
a lot. We have our own biases,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing to do, I think, is to then say, can we have open conversations? Can we take feedback? Because I think feedback truly is a breakfast of champions. You know? That maybe you have a blind spot. Maybe, I mean, sometimes I'm often tickled when I'm driving with a man and then something will happen and he'll say, that must be a female driver. The person in front
we
must
hear
be
that
a female
a lot.
driver,
Yes,
right? And it's those biases because maybe sometimes it's us who are uttering such statements.
And sometimes also, I don't know whether this is right to say, where it's not like it's coming from a negative, it's just sometimes we do it unconsciously, you know, thinking, maybe it's I was just saying, or it was just a joke. But again, this influences the way that we see things, right?
And that's why I think having open dialogue is important, inclusive dialogue, where you can just be candid and say, that narrative is perhaps
wrong.
Not serving us. So how do we change it? How do we make it inclusive? And how do we make our people feel included and that they have a place and that they belong where it is you want them to bring their best selves to.
Yeah. But then how do we break our own biases? Because I know, and especially amongst women, where sometimes, and especially when it comes to like political positions, some of us women will be like, no, I don't think I can make a great leader, or no, it's a very tough world, and I don't think I will be able to fit in. Or even positions, for example, like a CEO, you're doing very, very well, but maybe there's some women who might be like, that's a very big position that I don't think I am able to fit in or to serve well, right? So when it comes to our own biases, how then do we fight it?
Yeah. I think I remember this statement that's been made that the first step towards healing is acknowledging that you're sick. I think acknowledging that you have certain beliefs about yourself is important. I think it's an important step.
Yeah.
Being aware of those are, accepting them, and perhaps resolving them.
Okay.
To your question about how we hold ourselves back, I would say that for me, for example, it has helped me greatly to have people who then tell me when it's time.
Wow.
It's time for you to step up.
Yes.
And at the time, I'd be like, and I really
Are
must credit my mentor who one day called me and said, Gwen, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time for us to move on to the next step. And I was like, is she talking to me? Is she talking to someone
else? Yeah.
And I'm sure this is not foreign. This isn't just about my experience. I'm sure it's an experience many women share.
Yeah.
So I think the thing is to perhaps be that champion for someone else. Yeah. Identify someone who you can just champion and sponsor and help them see themselves in perhaps a way that they don't see themselves. Because we all have a superpower.
Oh, true.
And
Absolutely.
we all bring something magnificent to the table.
Yeah.
So how do we allow ourselves the opportunity to lead? Because that's not easy. How do we get comfortable with leadership and that you belong? I remember when I became CEO, one of my girlfriends said to me, you're going to struggle with imposter syndrome. And I didn't know at the time that it's a thing.
Yes.
But it's true. It does exist.
It really is, yeah.
But then how do you address it? You address it by knowing that I'm here because I deserve to be here. I'm here because I've done a couple of right things and I've had great support. And I've had a lot of people who have invested in me. And perhaps it's time for me to bring all that together and
bring it to the table.
And perhaps it's time for me to do the same for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like that. And then again, so addressing the personal, which is very, very important. Understanding who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, and how this will help you to become a greater leader, right? But then again, when it comes to like organizations and businesses as well, how then can they support, let's say, an individual to make sure that then they become their own authentic self and also able to deliver?
So I think the first thing is to create that environment. To create that environment where we don't hold straight jackets for everybody to fit into. That we are more obsessive about what matters in the long run. I don't run a business. I work with people. Right? And together with those people, we will come up with great business outcomes.
Absolutely.
So my first responsibility is to make those people or to work with those people in a way that allows them to bring their best self and their superpower to work. So the work around creating that environment is the hard one to do. And perhaps is where great investments should happen. The second thing is that we should allow people to express themselves in the best way that they can, and then coach and mentor them and provide them with support. But also, I think in this multifaceted world that we live in today, is to allow people to do different assignments. In our organization, we set up something we call communities. So we have communities around brand, we have communities around customer, we have communities around very many different facets. And what that does, and it's not just for our Kenyan business, it's across our region. So what that does is it allows our people to show up in different platforms. And so because they show up in different platforms with different people, there's a way it triggers different skills for them.
And outcomes as well,
It triggers for them an opportunity to show up in different ways.
Yeah.
So I think those opportunities to let people shine are important.
Okay.
Give them the support they require. Give them coaching as much as you can. And it doesn't need to be expensive things. The other thing for us as an organization that we try to do is we try to say that for the younger generation, it's not enough for them to say, I'm just making money. They want their work to have meaning,
yes.
and they want their work to be important. So how do we make that happen for them? We've got a community, I don't want to call them community service, but we've got CSR and CSI investments that we make around financial literacy for children, around road safety, around providing sponsorships for kids. And so specifically with an organization that we partner with, we allow, I remember when we started and they said, can you send us mentors? Okay. Who can come and speak to these young kids. These are high school kids. So we took 100 kids through high school, from Form 1 to Form 4. And the organization that we partner with, which is Kenya Education Fund, said to us, send us some mentors who can come and prepare them for college, and who can tell them about the real world, what they need to look forward to, etc. So we went and spoke to them, and they said, those guys are too old. We can't relate to them.
Find us young people.
So what we had to do was to then go back to the teams and say, guys, who is interested in going to talk to them? So we had our 20-something-year-olds, our 30-year-olds, go and present to them in Sheng. Go and present to them in a relatable way. And that really was fun for both those kids and for our people. So
and help them to learn as well. Those opportunities. I like that. So as we bring this to a close, let's hear what you had to say as far as the question that we asked you, and that is, what exactly makes a great leader? Dama Kamau says, one that inspires greatness starting from themselves. Exactly what Gwen is talking about. Then at Idagu 1 says, simple, sober, and God-fearing. Romans 12, verse 3, for by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but think of yourself with sober judgment according to the measure of faith God has given you. All right. And then one other person says, this is Ja_Luo says, integrity, aggressiveness, ability to listen carefully to others. All right. Thank you very much for what your feedback really as far as the topic, and that is authentic leadership. And of course, we have to say a special thank you to Gwen Kinusu, Chief Executive Officer at Prudential. Thank you very much. That was such an insightful conversation that we had today. And as well, thank you very much for sticking with us until the end of the show. That is where we have to say goodbye. I know we can talk about this over and over again, but then in the interest of time, we have to say goodbye. So my name is Winnie Lubembe. Enjoy your weekend. Remember to stay safe, and remember that authentic leadership, of course, is very, very important, because showing up as yourself actually matters. See you on Monday. Goodbye. You see how time flies?
I know. I can't believe that it's over.
Right?
I was thinking how it's going to be.